Welcome to the Wild and Curious podcast, a show that's part travel,
part feminism,
and completely inspired by extraordinary women worldwide. I'm Theresa Christine.
And I'm Suzanne Schmedding.
Something that's a really buzzword term in the travel industry is authentic and like having an authentic travel experience.
Yes.
What is that to you?
When I went to Spain and I met up with this girl who had lived there her whole life, you know, she was like taking me around and we're walking all over town, you know, well past 11 p.m. And it was really lovely. And it was
so late.
So shut up. It's late for me. I'm in bed by 9:30 kind of gal.
I get it.
To sleep. But you know, it was, you know, and I understand that it's a very common experience that you can have in the US, but like she was showing me spots that were not tourist places. You know, it wasn't like, oh yeah, all the menus are in English as well. Like it was like, this is a Spanish restaurant, you know, these are her people, these are her friends, you know, and I loved that.
Yeah. And it's so hard because like, I think that's what a lot of people really want. If they are physically capable of, you know, being able to do an experience, like have an experience like that, they want that. But how do you seek that out in a real, authentic way, if you will, you know, other than, you know, booking a tour or something? Like you have to go beyond that sometimes.
Well, right. And I think what I love so much about travel is the idea of like, I'm not just going to observe another way of life or, you know, take pictures. I want to put myself in other people's shoes and understand the world a little bit better and understand other cultures a little bit better.
And that's why it's so cool when you are able to find that happy balance between a tour that is, you know, run by local people and actually does show you the true side of what a culture is like, and the money that you pay for that goes towards those people as well. So yes, it's still a tour and it is tourism in that sense, but I think people kind of crave that balance nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our guest today does such an amazing job of that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Karen Nutarak, she lives in Pond Inlet, Canada, which is a small community where the majority of people, including Karen, are indigenous. She is a community liaison for Adventure Canada and a new entrepreneur.
She is also in the process of launching her own business, AT, Let's Go Tourism, which facilitates the meaningful interactions between travelers and locals.
Life up here is way different from Los Angeles, actually. We've had we've had quite a few extreme cold warning this year. When we say extreme cold warning, it's always minus 50, and a lot of times, it's frostbite in minutes. That's what they say, and it's been pretty cold. It's normal weather up here. So in wintertime, from November, beginning of November until December, we don't see daylight. It's dark 24 hours, and then beginning of January, the daylight starts to come back a little. Well, in August, we start getting the dark season, and then by November, it's 24-hour darkness, and then right now we're getting daylight now for about 12 hours, maybe 10 hours a day.
Wow, that is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in April, we're going to get 24-hour darkness until August, and we're surrounded by mountains. The Lancaster Sound, the ocean is in the right in front of the community. There's houses, public housing, and some people own their houses. There's roads. A lot of people drive snowmobiles, and quite a few people drive their trucks in the community. Pond Inlet is basically all uphill. There's about 1,700 people. About 85% are Inuit, and then there are Southerners that come up to work, or some people stay.
Wow, that's such an incredibly different way of life, and I mean it's a smaller community, and you as a budding entrepreneur for a tea tourism, what kind of support or community do you have there as a businesswoman?
Yeah, I have support from especially my family, and then there's the government has a department called Economic Development and Transportation. So they are very supportive, and the company in Iqaluit called Travel Nunavut, very, very supportive on starting your own tourism business.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I am really wondering how the cruise industry affects daily life and it affects your life and people's lives in Pond Inlet when you have these cruise ships coming in, because I think a lot of people have a bit of a skewed and not positive attitude towards cruise ships right now, with over-tourism being an issue. And so how do the cruise ships affect you?
Well, I've been a culture performer since 1995, 20 years. And for me, I've never really had any problems. I've never had problems with the cruise ships. But the community always has concerns about, because there's a lot of ships coming through now through our community, because we're in the Northwest Passage with cruise ships, more cruise ships coming up, and Sealift, Baffinland shipping ore ships coming through. People are very concerned about the animals in the ocean, especially the seal and narwhal. This time up, people say that there's not enough whales coming through or seal, and that's people get upset over that, because a lot of our food. I just want to add that a lot of our food is flown up by plane, because we don't have roads connected to anywhere. So it's a very isolated place, and either the food is flown up with, which is very expensive, or we get it through Sealift once a year in September. Sealift meaning the ship coming up with the supplies. So the main diet for Inuit is the seal and the whale, narwhal.
Now, with the cruise ships coming in, one of the reasons we were so excited to talk to you is because you took something that I think could have been a potentially just really bad situation. You had cruise ships coming, you saw people getting off the ship, taking some photos, getting back on the ship, and you went ahead and started organizing. The first thing that you organized was a baseball game with travelers and locals, right?
Yeah, so that about 1994, the ship started coming up here, 93, 94, and people would just walk around. When the visitor center here was built, there was a staff, the manager, who organized a couple of cruise ships, and then I became one of the performers in 1995, and then 5 years later, I became the visitor center manager here in Pond Inlet. One of like you said, one of the first cruise ships I organized was with Matthew's One Adventure Canada, and we planned for a baseball game in the community.
And what kind of experiences now does Adventure Canada do, and do you curate?
So we do. So when the cruise ship comes, they do a walking tour, look at the exhibits at the visitor center. There's a sod house, an old ancient home made out of soil. They do this tour, and then they come to the sea hall, the community hall, where we perform the culture performance. But Adventure Canada always includes the community. So if it's not baseball, they plan for a soccer game, and they people mingle with the tourists. A lot of times, besides students on ice and Adventure Canada, most of the cruise ships just come to do the community tour, watch the culture performance, and go back to the ship. and we don't get a lot of feedback. And then people get upset because nobody buys. There's always a table for crafts, Inuit crafts, and a lot of tourists don't buy the crafts or talk to anybody in the community.
Yeah, and then it just feels like you're almost on display,
right?
And you're not actually a
Yes.
human being.
Yes, but there's always somebody on the ships that's really nice and talk to people. But sometimes, a lot of times, they just go up to the show and then go back to the shore to go back to the ship.
Well, so when you started creating these immersive experiences and having a little bit more interaction, I mean, hopefully that feels like you're taking a little bit more control over the interactions. Do you have any kind of particular memory that is special to you that helped redefine your interactions with people who are coming up from the South?
I remember one time with Adventure Canada again, because they've been so good mingling, having their guests to respect our community. I remember them bringing food. They did a barbecue in the community. I think it was before a game, and people came and had like sandwiches. Sometimes we're very excited when somebody brings us a food wrapper that we haven't seen, we've never seen.
You're like, what is this?
So even like the ship food, the cruise ship food is being brought up to the sea hall. It's like, wow, they're like new food.
It's probably like the equivalent when someone goes to Japan and brings back the Japanese Kit Kats or something, and we're all like, whoa!
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember that one time food was brought up and we had a barbecue and it was open to anybody in the community, and a baseball game was played, and Matthew always brought a trophy.
Aw.
And then the next year, if they came back, they would try to win back the trophy, or we would try to win back the trophy. So it was always fun.
The ongoing sports rival. I love it.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said about how just food brings people together. Something as simple as just sharing a meal with someone new and sitting down and talking to them. It's really beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I love the idea that like people from the cruise ship are bringing their cruise food to this barbecue, and it's like they're far from home. Obviously, they're on this cruise, but they're sharing. You guys are meeting. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, there's another cruise ship that comes once in a while. It's called Crystal Serenity. It's a cruise ship that people live on. It came twice, and they organize big events in the community with people, the Inuit sewing traditional outfits, cleaning a seal skin, but they don't mingle a lot with the community. They just come up and look at these displays of what Inuit are doing.
I think I would be remiss not to touch on, this is probably a whole other podcast discussion about,
right.
Inuit culture and the way that Canada has dealt with and treated indigenous people. And so I'm wondering, like, how can travelers balance exploring Inuit culture while also being respectful, which is something that I think you do really well with Adventure Canada and with your own business?
Yeah, if the managers of these companies would contact directly to the organizer of this community, I think more organized community visits would benefit both the tourists and the community, the people.
No, I love that. It makes sense,
Yeah, because someone like I've worked at the visitor center for 3 years. I'm now the adult educator at the community college. When I worked for the visitor center, they would just email you of what they want, and then you had to organize what they wanted to do. If there was more communications between the organizer for the cruise ship company and the organizer in the community, I think like communication is the best key. planning things, then I think, and if they had more time here, because sometimes it's like they're here 2 hours or 4 hours, and everything's rushed.
Yeah, I think that's a really tricky thing, just responsible tourism in general, and then also, trying to remain as respectful as you can of a culture and sharing it without diluting it.
Yeah.
It's really difficult.
It's a very big task you've taken on, but I mean, we're so excited to see what Let's Go Tourism AT has in store.
Yeah, so with my business, the business I just started, AT means let's go. So let's go tourism. I plan for winter activities, summer, fall, spring, and then any cultural relevant activities like string games, storytelling, visiting an elder. So I'm starting this business so that we could have Southern people understand where we're from, what our life is, instead of always learning us from the news or research. I would love people to get to know us better.
What Karen is doing, I think, is what we were talking about, kind of finding that balance between, her culture comes first. Like, that is what's most important to her. And for her to be able to approach the tourism industry and have them mold and change their ways to be sustainable, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, no, and I feel like it's one of those things where it gives her own community a sense of power as well. Like they're embracing their culture more. They're defining it and showing it to other people, and it gives them a stronger sense of community as well.
And they're showing it on their terms.
Yeah.
And showcasing it in the way that is comfortable and real for them. And there is just something to be said about, you drop in to a place on a cruise ship, you drop in for a day, if even, maybe a few hours. And what are you going to really remember? Is it going to be the pictures of pretty houses, or is it going to be the really intriguing and eye-opening conversations that you have?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I love that. If you would like to find out more about Karen's business, AT, Let's Go Tourism, you can go to their Facebook page, or you can go to attourism.com, which is ATIITOURISM.
You can also learn more about Adventure Canada at adventurecanada.com or on their Instagram at adventure.canada. You've been listening to the Wild and Curious podcast, hosted by me, Theresa Christine.
And me, Suzanne Schmedding. If you've enjoyed this episode, there's more where this came from. Subscribe to the Wild and Curious podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. You can also follow along with our adventures on Instagram. Our handle is @_thewildandcurious_, and we will also put that in the show notes for you.
We are always looking for extraordinary women to talk to you on our show. If you have someone in mind, or you are that someone, go to thewildandcurious.com to let us know.